Ikata is a loser dweeb who has no friends because he's almost as ugly as you. However, when the popular girl in class starts bullying him non-stop, he tries to get revenge, but somehow rizzes her up instead. Before this, Ikata secretly prepares a jack-in-the-box to prank Takagi, the most popular girl in class and childhood friend. However, Takagi already suspects the big-headed moron is planning one of his miserable pranks again, so she outsmarts him by pretending she's having trouble opening her pencil case. She then asks him for help, and the dumb weasel agrees. However, the instant he opens the pencil case, he gets hit with a monster face spring, causing him to scream like a girl and disturb the entire class. This irritates the grumpy teacher, who calls Ikata a donkey for being loud, while Takagi cracks up watching him embarrass himself. Being pranked by the same trick he had planned to use upset Ikata, but he gets over it almost immediately and starts thinking with all his brain cells for his ultimate comeback. Just then, Takagi asks for his eraser, saying she forgot hers. Seeing this as his chance for sweet revenge, Ikata gives her his, but calls her brain dead for forgetting hers. While he expects Takagi to be bummed out by his roasting, Ikata is disappointed when she doesn't even bat an eye, and this frustrates him. However, after Takagi finishes using the eraser, she tells him a stupid story about how writing your crush's name on an eraser can automatically turn the crush into a simp. Somehow, the ignorant buffoon believes her story, and when he notices Takagi staring at his eraser like something is written on it, he freaks out, thinking he must have accidentally written down her name. Scared that she might start seeing him as a creep, Ikata begs Takagi to return his eraser, and when she does, he quickly checks, but he is shocked to see that there is nothing written on it. Mad at being played like a fool yet again, Ikata yells at Takagi in frustration, but his frying pan head gets struck by a piece of chalk hurled across the room by the teacher, who warns him to stop disturbing his class. Watching Ikata embarrass himself once again makes Takagi laugh like she's watching a comedy show. Once she has had her fill, she asks the teacher for permission to use the restroom and then leaves. Seeing that Takagi left her eraser on her desk, Ikata decides to revenge prank by writing the name of some random boy in the class on it, so he can make fun of her when she returns. However, as he tries to pull out the eraser from its pack, he freezes when he sees that there's already something written on it. Silently hoping it's his name, Ikata slowly pulls it out from the pack, but he's disappointed when he sees that the first two letters aren't those of his name. Now, desperate to know the big Willy Sigma Takagi is secretly crushing on, Ikata nervously struggles to pull out the eraser. Once it's out, he's shocked to the bone when he sees that the complete text is actually a message instructing him to look toward the hallway. As he obeys, he sees Takagi laughing at how stupid he is, making him realize he's fallen victim to her prank. However, what the clueless idiot doesn't know is that Takagi secretly wrote his name on the other side of the eraser. The following day, Ikata heads to school early because he has day duty. Even though he's bummed out about it, the thought of using this as an opportunity to rig Takagi's desk and finally get back at her fills him with excitement. However, as he gets close to the school, he looks up at his class, only to see Takagi already there, staring back at him as if she has a plan up her sleeve, which makes him uneasy. When he gets to class, he notices Takagi isn't there and immediately suspects the short witch must be hiding somewhere, waiting for the perfect moment to pop out and scare him senseless. Deciding to get her first, Ikata starts searching everywhere for her. However, when he can't find her, he slumps into his seat in frustration, only to get scared by Takagi, who has been hiding behind the curtains the entire time. As Takagi laughs at her diabolical prank, Ikata is furious that he was dumb enough to fall for her shenanigans yet again. Shortly afterwards, Ikata notices Takagi smiling like a dummy and wonders why. Takagi then confesses that being alone in class with him makes her feel like they are the only ones in the world, and this makes Ikata blush. Moments later, Ikata is desperately racking his brain for a way to get back at Takagi after all the humiliation he's suffered. While he's at it, some random side character walks into the restroom and bursts out laughing at how Ikata's face looks like a deranged clown, and this sparks an idea in Ikata. So later that day, while the gutter-faced teacher drones on with his lecture, Ikata decides to prank Takagi by making a Joker face, hoping she'll laugh and distract the class. However, when he shows Takagi his funny face, she cringes that it looks like a pig took a dump on his face. She then shows him a mirror so he can see how disgusting his face card is, and Ikata ends up being the one laughing at his own joke, forcing the teacher to angrily scold him for being a colossal failure. The next day, during calligraphy class, the teacher instructs the students to write down their favorite word. As everyone starts cracking their brains for the perfect word, Takagi notices Ikata is also struggling, so she suggests they just write down what they both want from each other. Ikata agrees, and the first thought that comes to his watermelon head is a message telling Takagi to stop teasing him. But as he is about to write it down, he realizes being too direct will only give Takagi more reason to tease him. After Takagi is done writing, she asks that they reveal what they both wrote, and on her own paper, she scribbles down the word status quo. In Ikata's paper, he decides to write the word restraint, but when Takagi asks what he means by restraint, Ikata realizes that the meaning of his message is way too high for her intelligence. Ikata then asks why she wrote down status quo, so Takagi explains that it simply means that she wants him to remain the brain-dead idiot that he is so she can continue teasing him. Seeing that Takagi's message was more direct, Ikata asks that they redo the exercise, and Takagi agrees. This time, he decides to be more direct, so he immediately writes down the word kindness, hoping it will send a message to Takagi that she hasn't been so kind to him. However, his plan gets isekai'd on arrival when Takagi politely compliments his handwriting, making him blush beet red, as this is the first time anyone has ever said nice words to him. While in shock, he accidentally drops his brush, but Takagi picks it up for him and returns it. This kind gesture completely messes up his head, and as he zones out like a bonehead thinking about Takagi's unexpected kindness, Takagi suddenly scrubs his face with her finger, saying he has something on his face. Her kind act plants doubt in Ikata's heart, making him reconsider the word kindness he had scribbled on his paper. After the writing activity ends, Takagi asks to see what he wrote, and Ikata's heart races for a bit before he shows his paper where instead of kindness, he asks her to stop teasing him. Amused by his words, Takagi tells him the only way she'll stop teasing him is if he kicks the bucket. But after thinking it over, she promises she'll try her best to stop teasing him. When Ikata asks to see what she wrote on her paper, Takagi proudly flips it, and Ikata is shocked to see a teasing message informing him that he has ink on his stupid face. Ikata quickly rubs his face to confirm, and that's when he sees dark ink smudged on his finger, making him realize that Takagi's earlier kind gesture of wiping his cheek was only a scam to rub ink on his face. Having been pranked yet again makes Ikata furious, but Takagi just laughs at him and calls him a dumb weirdo. Later that day, while Teacher Frankenstein is in class, Ikata is more focused on getting his revenge on Takagi for messing with him earlier. However, while he is lost in thought, the teacher calls his name and asks him a question. Caught off guard, Ikata freezes like a popsicle because his brain is empty, like your inbox, and seeing him struggle, Takagi tells him the answer is 16. However, when Ikata blurts out 16, a chalk smacks his head, and the teacher angrily reminds him that it's an English class, not math. After Ikata quietly sits in shame, Takagi explains that she meant the answer was on line 16 of the passage, but Ikata doesn't buy a word she says and thinks she tried to sabotage him on purpose. To get his revenge, Ikata decides to distract Takagi from the lesson, hoping that when the teacher asks her a question, she will end up making a fool of herself as he did. So he starts by engaging her in useless questions, and watching Takagi yap on and on excites him. Fortunately for him, the teacher calls on Takagi for the next question, and Ikata is thrilled, certain that Takagi is about to mess herself up. However, he is shocked out of his monkey mind when Takagi answers the question with ease. After she returns to her seat, she picks up on the gloom on his face and asks what is troubling him. Ikata claims it's nothing, but Takagi teases that he must be fantasizing about her cakes when she earlier stood up. Seeing his shocked reaction, Takagi bursts out laughing and then quietly tells him that she is always thinking about him too. The following week, everyone in class gets to enjoy some time in the pool, but Ikata is unable to join them because he injured his hand. While he sulks about it, Takagi suddenly sits beside him, and Ikata is shocked to see that she also isn't soaking herself in the pool. When Takagi asks what happened to his hand, Ikata refuses to tell her, but she immediately guesses that he must have sustained the injury when he tried to pet a stray cat and got bitten. Ikata is shocked that she knew since he didn't tell a soul about the incident, but Takagi just calls him a klutz and laughs at how dumb he thinks. Takagi then asks him to take a wild guess as to why she isn't swimming, and Ikata immediately suspects it's because she is on her period. However, knowing it is rude to say such things out loud, he decides to keep his mouth shut. When Takagi notices that Ikata isn't making any guesses but just staring at the hotties in the pool, she accuses him of ogling the girls' pom-poms so he can use for his night pump session, but Ikata immediately denies it. However, that's when Ikata suddenly notices that Takagi's is flatter than a paved road, making him suspect that the reason she didn't want to swim is that she is ashamed of wearing a bikini on her flagpole body. But he figures pointing that out right will be seen as body shaming, and the fact that he can't bring himself to loudly guess anything almost drives him nuts. As Takagi continues to pester him for a guess, Ikata finally summons the courage to tell her that it's because she is on her period. But Takagi scolds him that it's rude to say such a thing about a girl, which makes Ikata panic, and as he desperately tries to explain, Takagi laughs, seeing his tense reaction. After she finishes making fun of him, she strips, revealing her swimsuit, and asks the teacher for permission to join the others in the pool. Surprised by this, Ikata asks why she stayed with him all this time instead of swimming, and Takagi reveals that she did that because she wanted to see the reaction on his pitiful face after she pranked him, making Ikata furious. After school that day, Ikata walks home while chilling with a can of soft drink, but on the way, he bumps into none other than Takagi, who asks to walk home with him. Ikata reluctantly agrees, and as they walk home together, Takagi takes an interest in his soft drink and asks to take a sip. Ikata agrees, but as he gives her the drink, he immediately reminds her that taking a sip means she has indirectly kissed an ugly loser. Ikata hopes, saying this will certainly embarrass Takagi, but to his shock, she chugs the drink like she's dehydrated. When she gives it back to him, Ikata gets scared of drinking from the same can, not to indirectly kiss her, so Takagi teases him, causing him to panic and accidentally drop the drink can on the ground. Seeing a trash bin close by, Ikata tosses the can inside like a pro basketballer, and Takagi compliments how perfect his aim is. Unable to believe his luck, Ikata decides to try one more time, and when he gets a perfect throw just like the first time, he realizes that he might be the Stephen Curry of the anime world. Takagi decides to also try, but she misses miserably, prompting Ikata to make fun of her. Takagi then challenges him to a match, and believing there's no way he can lose, Ikata agrees. For the rules of the game, Takagi states that they will each get one throw, and the first one to make a perfect throw inside the garbage bin wins. Feeling overconfident, Ikata promises that she wins. He will become her slave for a year, and Takagi smiles, warning him not to take back his word. To start off the game, Takagi tosses the can into the air, and by some voodoo magic, it lands perfectly inside the garbage bin, shocking Ikata. Now feeling nervous, Ikata picks up a can, and to ensure he gets the perfect three-pointer, he stands at the same spot as the last time. However, as he readies to make the throw, Takagi distracts him by promising to let him eat her tuna if he manages to win, and this makes the virgin loser fail to hit the target. Feeling miserable, Ikata drops to his knees and complains that Takagi did him dirty, but she tells him it's a cold world and reminds him that a promise must be kept, making him furious. Getting home later that afternoon, Ikata switches on the television, where he hears Andrew Tate yapping about how training 10 times harder as a punishment for each mistake has helped him become the top G. However, when he starts with push-ups, the weight of his 300-pound head makes it difficult for him, so he collapses on the floor. Still, Ikata refuses to give up and is determined to boost his testosterone so Takagi will stop teasing him. The next day in class, Ikata can hardly feel his hand after all the push-ups he did the day before. When Takagi learns that his entire hand is sore, she tickles him and then makes fun of him while he screams in pain. Takagi then asks why he is sore, and Ikata brags that he has started muscle training and will soon become the next Ashton Hall. However, Takagi replies that she can bet her big left eye that he will quit after 3 days. Determined to prove her wrong, Ikata manages to do some push-ups when he gets home that day, even though his entire body is at its breaking point. Days later, while strolling back home from school, Takagi asks if he is still training, and when Ikata confirms that he is, she compliments him for not quitting after 3 days as she expected. However, she warns him that, according to Wikipedia, training too much can make a person shorter than Kevin Hart, and this makes Ikata panic, realizing that if Takagi grows taller than him, she'll make fun of him even more. When Ikata asks what he should do to prevent this, Takagi encourages him to continue training, saying she likes his new jacked physique. This compliment goes straight into Ikata's head and makes him blush like a ballerina girl, and when Takagi notices him looking all red, she laughs at him and calls him a dummy. Ikata then asks why she finds joy teasing him every day like it's a government job, and Takagi explains that she enjoys seeing his priceless reactions. Right after saying that, she compliments his physique again, making the innocent boy blush even harder, and then she teases him before walking away. The next day after school, it rains heavily, and after Ikata learns that Takagi forgot her umbrella and raincoat at home, he mocks her dishwasher brain as a way of getting back at her for teasing him. He expects her to break down and cry at his roasting, but Takagi just tells him that since his umbrella is as big as his forehead, they can both share. A few minutes later, while walking home together with Takagi under the same umbrella, Ikata starts shaking like a washing machine since this is his first time being so close to a girl. On the way, he spots a toad and thinks it will be the perfect prank to scare Takagi. However, when he shows her the toad, expecting her to scream worse than a banshee, Takagi keeps her cool and then starts playing with the toad, shocking Ikata. Suddenly, Ikata notices the toad on his shoulder, and as he freaks out in shock, Takagi teases him for being a scared little boy. Moments later, Takagi notices that Ikata's shoulder is wet by the rain, so she tells him to scoot closer so he doesn't catch a cold. But Ikata nervously tells her that he is fine, so Takagi scoots close, brushing his shoulder, which electrifies Ikata's little Pete Davidson. Wanting to avoid Takagi from making fun of how tense he is, Ikata quickly changes the topic and starts roasting Takagi for forgetting her umbrella. To his shock, Takagi admits for the first time to being an airhead for forgetting her umbrella, and hearing Takagi roast herself makes Ikata feel like a Nobel Prize winner. Right after this, Takagi also admits to having trouble remembering anything at all and then asks Ikata to help her with the right word when a couple make babies. Hearing this makes Ikata flustered, but not wanting Takagi to know he is nervous, Ikata answers that the word is called diddling. Still, Takagi continues to tease him, saying she can't hear him and wants him to talk louder, which makes him very uncomfortable, and just watching him crash out amuses Takagi. The following day, in the staff room, Ikata gets scolded by teacher Lizardface for disturbing his class lately, and as punishment, the teacher assigns him to clean the science room after school. So, later that day after school, while in the science room, Ikata is mad that he is the only one being punished when Takagi has been the one teasing him during class. However, as he opens the cupboard to take out the broom, he suddenly finds Takagi inside and freaks out. When Ikata asks whether she also has to clean the science room as punishment, Takagi ignores the question and suggests they get the cleaning over with. To make the cleaning exercise fun, she suggests they play rock, paper, scissors, and the loser has to clean a quarter of the room. Seeing this as an opportunity to escape cleaning, Ikata immediately jumps on the offer, thinking he has a chance at winning the game 4 times in a row. However, after they play the first round, he loses and is forced to clean the first quarter of the room while Takagi laughs at him for being a sore loser. While this is ongoing, one of Ikata's ugly friends with no eyes, named Nakai, suddenly shows up with his babe to check up on Ikata. After they leave, Takagi reveals to Ikata that Nakai and his babe are on their way to the rooftop to bump uglies, shocking Ikata. While thinking about it, Takagi adds that she envies them because they are enjoying their youth unlike her, who is yet to get cracked, and hearing this statement coming from her surprises Ikata. After Ikata finishes cleaning the first quarter of the room, they play another round of rock, paper, scissors, and across all 4 rounds of the game, Ikata loses and ends up cleaning the science lab by himself. As they prepare to leave, Ikata asks Takagi if she has learned from the punishment and will stop teasing him now, but Takagi says she didn't learn jack and then reveals that she wasn't even punished in the first place. Shocked, Ikata asks whether she really came just to tease him, and Takagi admits it, explaining that her intention is to enjoy her youth, which confuses Ikata. Later, while they head home together, Takagi complains of thirst, and then suggests they compete in any game of Ikata's choice, and the loser will get to buy a drink. Ikata immediately jumps on the offer, realizing that he will get to pick the game. To start the game, he takes Takagi to the park, where he says he would like them to do a kickover on a high bar. A few days ago, Ikata managed to do a kickover on a high bar for the first time in his life, so he believes this challenge will be easy peasy for him, and is sure Takagi will not be able to do it. When Takagi reminds him that she is putting on a skirt, Ikata smirks, expecting her to give up for that very reason, but to his shock, Takagi says she is locked in and ready to start. However, she warns that Ikata will have to turn his back while she does the kickover so he won't get a 4K view of her kitty. She also points out that if by any chance Ikata decides to play Johnny Sins and turn to look, he will have to forfeit the game and hand her the victory. As Takagi grabs onto the bar, ready to flip over, Ikata turns his virgin eyes away, and after a second, Takagi claims she is done, surprising Ikata, and making him doubt if she really did anything at all. When it's Ikata's turn, he pushes himself beyond his limit, and after much struggle, he manages to do a kickover. After catching his breath, Takagi suggests they do it again, and Takagi immediately agrees, but with how fast she agreed, Ikata starts to suspect the girl is a fraud who isn't doing any kickover. So this time, as Takagi flips the bar, Ikata turns to look and is shocked to the bone to see that Takagi actually did the kickover. However, he is also disappointed that, instead of seeing her turkey slice, he sees the old papa's shorts she is putting on underneath her skirt. After Takagi is done, she tells Ikata to go for his turn, but Ikata, feeling bad about turning back to look, throws in the towel, making Takagi the winner. For losing, Ikata is forced to buy Takagi a chilled drink, but Takagi admits that she doesn't feel like a winner since he decided to be a useless quitter. Ikata grumbles that he didn't have to look to the other side since she was wearing shorts, and Takagi overhears it and calls him a creepy weirdo. As she turns to leave with her bicycle, Ikata runs after her to explain that his intention wasn't to look, but Takagi just ignores his senseless ramblings. Later that night, Ikata stays up for hours watching a soap opera named Unrequited Love, about a baddie who is madly in love with a hot dude who treats her like trash. The next day in class, Ikata shows up late with a nose mask, claiming to have a cold. When Takagi asks if he really has a cold, Ikata tells her no while trying to be as cool as the hot dude in the show he watched. But Takagi wonders if he emptied his brain when he woke that morning. She immediately suspects he must have stayed up all night watching Unrequited Love, and Ikata is startled by her accurate guess. When he tries to deny it, he gets smacked on the head by the teacher, who scolds him for being noisy, and this makes Takagi laugh. To get back at her, Ikata decides to use a few tricks he learned from the show, one of which is a scene where the hot guy told the thirsty girl that she was cute just to shut her up from constant nagging about unreciprocated love. However, while he waits for Takagi to fire off one of her usual teasing remarks about his enormous head, he is disappointed when several minutes pass and Takagi doesn't utter a single word. When he turns to look at her, he sees her sitting quietly and looking pretty, and the endearing sight fries his brain, but he immediately looks away when he notices Takagi staring back at him. Later that day after school, 3 of Takagi's ugly friends spot Takagi and Ikata at a snack store together and immediately suspect they must be dating. So, to confirm their suspicions, the 3 lonely shorties decide to tail them to find out if they are going to a hotel to cream their plots. However, when Ikata notices they are being followed, he suggests they make a run for it, and Takagi agrees. The instant Takagi and Ikata turn around a corner, the 3 girls immediately follow after them, but they realize they've been left behind, just like their fathers left them to chase after Instagram babes. Meanwhile, Ikata and Takagi hide inside a bush to lose the girls, where Ikata tries to control the tornado in his pants just from being so close to Takagi. Once the girls leave, they emerge from the bush, but Takagi immediately starts to race ahead without Ikata realizing, in order to gain an advantage. A couple of weeks later, while Ikata studies at the library, his goon-loving friends suggest they go milk their sausages instead, but Ikata refuses, insisting that he needs to study, which pisses them off. As they leave, Takagi suddenly appears with her beautiful forehead and requests to sit with him. Ikata agrees, and as she sits, she tells him she overheard his conversation with his homies, then asks why he refused to hang out with them. Ikata explains that he doesn't have the time to play with tarted losers, and he needs to study to pass the upcoming test, or else his parents will confiscate his video games. Right after saying this, Ikata immediately regrets it, since he believes Takagi will only use it to tease him and then interfere with his study. Just then, Ikata notices Takagi reading a storybook, and when he asks why she isn't studying for the test, Takagi explains that she only studies for 2 hours every day. Hearing this, Ikata remembers that unlike him who was born with a smooth brain, Takagi is actually a genius and can easily ace the test. As he tries to study, despite knowing that Takagi might tease him at any given moment, Takagi points out an obvious mistake in his calculations and then lifts her chair closer so she can school him. Ikata is shocked that instead of Takagi being mean to him as usual, she actually wants to teach him. He suspects it might just be one of her usual tactics to tease him, but after he gets the answer right by following her teaching, he realizes she truly wants him to pass. When he asks why she is being so nice to him all of a sudden, Takagi explains that even though she enjoys teasing him during class, she doesn't want him to fail the test and become a school dropout. She also apologizes for teasing him every day, and seeing the sincerity on her face excites Ikata, as he now believes she has finally turned over a new leaf. Moments later, while walking home, Ikata thanks Takagi for helping with his math problems. Now certain he has a better chance of acing the test, Takagi accepts his thanks, but then warns him that the math problems she taught him won't be on the test, making Ikata panic. The following week in class, the much-awaited test is conducted, and when the results are out, the teacher shares the result sheets with everyone. As Takagi goes to take her own sheet, the teacher compliments her on her outstanding performance, and when Ikata asks what her score is, Takagi refuses to tell him. When Ikata finally gets his result sheet, He realizes he scored 59% and is furious that Takagi wasted his time teaching him what wasn't on the test. Just then, Takagi brings up one of her usual games, and this time she suggests they guess each other's scores, and whoever guesses the closest score wins. Ikata agrees, and as Takagi immediately guesses that he scored about 50%, he is shocked, wondering if she can now read people's minds. Trying to confuse her from accurately guessing his score, Ikata starts making senseless facial reactions, and after making several guesses, Takagi finally concludes that he must have scored 56%. Excited that she failed to make an accurate guess, Ikata boldly shows her his sheet and then calls her a pathetic loser. But his head gets smacked by a piece of chalk thrown by the teacher, who tells him that the only losers are his parents for birthing a dullard like him. After that, Takagi suggests that Ikata guess her score, and the desperate moron decides to make an accurate guess based on her facial expression. He figures that since the teacher praised her, Takagi must have scored 90% or higher. However, when he mentions that she scored 92%, Takagi makes a surprised expression, confusing him. After randomly mentioning several numbers, Ikata concludes that she must have scored 97%, but Takagi shows her sheet, which shows she actually scored 92%. As Ikata crashes out for losing the bet, Takagi teases him that he lost because he didn't trust her enough, even after she pointed him to the right answer using facial expressions, making Ikata feel worse than he already does. Later that afternoon at a bookstore downtown, Ikata purchases a steamy magazine so he can quickly goon it home. However, as he steps out of the bookstore, he is greeted by Takagi, who asks to see the book he purchased. Scared of her finding out about his degenerate hobbies, Ikata refuses to show her, and immediately leaves to get away from her, but Takagi follows him like she works for the popo, insisting on seeing the book. Realizing Takagi won't let him be until she finds out the truth, Ikata lies that he purchased a self-help book. However, Takagi already knows the useless gooner is lying, and then correctly guesses that he must have bought a Playboy magazine, much to Ikata's shock. Ikata then begs her not to reveal his spicy secret to the Twitter community, and Takagi promises to vault his secret for eternity, but then says she is disappointed that he actually looked her in the eyes and lied. Knowing that Takagi finds pleasure in making him suffer, Ikata continues to beg her not to tell anyone, so Takagi decides to tell him a secret of hers in return to make it even. As she leans close, she reveals that she likes him, making Ikata tense up. Seeing his virgin reaction, Takagi laughs and immediately claims to be kidding, saying it's payback for lying to her. The next day, it rains heavily, and Takagi gets drenched badly. While she takes off her wet socks, Ikata sees through her school uniform, and his small pickle gets excited, but he starts turning his head like a faulty antenna to control his freaky urges. With her school shirt wet, Takagi asks Ikata for his sportswear, promising to wash and return it, and Ikata nervously agrees. After she changes into his sportswear, she suggests that they make a bet on whether the rain will stop when the clock at the town strikes 5 or if it will keep raining. She then spices it up by stating that the loser will have to do anything that the winner wants. When she asks Ikata for his bet, he bets that the rain will keep pouring, so Takagi bets that it will stop. However, Ikata doesn't give a rat's ass if the rain stops or not as if it stops. He gets to go home to massage his already poking sausage, and if it doesn't, he wins and Takagi becomes his slave. Just then, some stray cat strolls by, and after it shakes off the water from its fur, Ikata's shirt gets wet, so Takagi suggests he wear her sportswear, which is a little wet, but just thinking about putting on Takagi's sportswear makes the cultured idiot blush hard, and seeing him blush like a Barbie character makes Takagi tease him. A few hours later, the clouds clears and the rain finally stops, making Takagi the winner of the bet. However, Ikata isn't worried because he still gets to go home, but Takagi rains on his sweet parade by insisting that she wants him to accompany her somewhere since he is now her slave toy. The following week in class, the maidenless teacher announces the summer vacation and then warns the students not to go about making babies. While walking home that day, Ikata is over the moon about the summer holiday and can't wait to do his nerdy stuff, but Takagi is nonchalant and is only concerned about doing her homework. On the way, they spot Nakai and his babe riding on his bike together like lovebirds, and this makes Ikata and Takagi realize just how messed up their love lives are. As they continue the journey home, Takagi suggests they ride her bike together just like Nakai and his babe, but Ikata, being vanilla, immediately objects and starts yapping about how dangerous it will be. When Takagi teases him that he is just scared and doesn't have the balls, Ikata angrily yells that he isn't scared, and then reluctantly agrees that they ride together. With that, they head to the vacant lot where Ikata takes charge and is determined to prove that he isn't a sissy boy. However, as he tries to ride the bike, he fumbles, so Takagi threatens that if he can't, he will have to buy her juice. Trying to make excuses for his uselessness, Ikata accuses Takagi of using her shapeless cake to throw them off balance on purpose. But Takagi disagrees and then reveals that the last time she rode with someone, the person pedaled smoothly. Hearing this, Ikata becomes nervous, so he asks if she rode with a girl, but Takagi tells him she rode with a man, making Ikata even more nervous and determined to prove himself. For a brief moment, he pulls it off and starts riding the bike until Takagi mentions that the man she rode with the last time was her pops, making Ikata lose control. Since he failed to ride the bicycle, Ikata buys Takagi a drink, but when he checks his wallet, he realizes he only has coins left like a homeless scrub. When Takagi asks if he doesn't want a drink, Ikata nervously claims he is good, but Takagi, knowing he is a broke mommy's boy with no change, decides to buy one for him. He thanks her, and as he gulps down the drink, Takagi suggests that they take advantage of the summer vacation to practice their couple bike riding. The next day, it rains heavily, but Ikata still makes it to the park for the bike training. Soon after, Takagi meets up with him, and Ikata nearly has a jizz bomb, seeing how innocently hot she looks dressed so casually. Seeing that the park is a mess from the rain, Takagi suggests they skip bike training that day and hang out instead, but Ikata freaks out, realizing it's more like a date. Since he is shy, Ikata proposes that they go someplace where none of their classmates will see them, and Takagi agrees, so she takes him to a bridge darker than the inside of your smelly boxers. She then explains that she wants them to do a test of courage, and Ikata, desperate to prove he is a man, agrees. However, before they dive right in, Takagi warns that based on rumors, there is a ghostly presence inside the bridge that haunts dudes and chops off their tiny carrots. Noticing that Ikata is almost at the verge of soiling his pants because of fear, she encourages him to man up, but Ikata angrily claims that he isn't afraid and then walks right in like a Giga Chad. Seeing how truly dark the bridge is, Ikata freezes with fear and realizes that he has effed up for real. But Takagi makes his bad situation worse by showing him a paper talisman that wards off evil spirits, making Ikata scream like a scared little weenie. To scare him even more, Takagi shows him a creepy drum and then tells him that it's filled with chopped peeners of dudes. Wanting to see for himself, Ikata nervously checks the drum, but he freaks out when Takagi suddenly appears behind him to scare him. Ikata tries to yell at her for messing with him, but realizes that Takagi has suddenly vanished like his father and starts to panic. However, Takagi suddenly appears and taps him on his shoulder, causing Ikata to scream in pure horror. Takagi then shows him a dark hole and asks him to take a peek inside. Knowing she's trying to trick him again, Ikata agrees with a plan in mind to get back at her, so he fingers it and then claims his hand has been caught by a ghost just to scare Takagi. However, Takagi ends up scaring him by placing a lid over her face to look like a ghost. After they finally exit the bridge, two ugly brats spot them and then call them a couple on a date, which makes Ikata blush like a fool. Later that day at home, Ikata does some push-ups as punishment for letting himself get teased by Takagi. The next morning, Ikata is out running errands since Takagi went to the Bahamas with her family for a vacation and couldn't make it for their usual bike training. However, on the way, he spots a portable set of cheeks that looks like Takagi's own and immediately realizes that it's Takagi. To prank her, Ikata decides to trail her, but Takagi quickly notices the horrendous moron spying on her, so she pulls a smart move by leading him to a corner and using her hat as a diversion, scares him senseless. When she learns that Ikata is going grocery shopping, she tells him she is also on her way to the grocery shop and then suggests they tag along. However, as she tries to take her hat from the bush, she almost trips, so Ikata tries to catch her but ends up slamming into the ground hard. This causes him to sprain his knee, so Takagi suggests he wash it with water. When they arrive at the park, Ikata washes the injury with water, and after he is done, Takagi gives him her handkerchief to dry it. Ikata reluctantly accepts it, and after he ties up the injury with the handkerchief, Takagi thanks him for attempting to save her even though he failed, and then asks him to join her in cooling off her feet in the water. Hearing this, Ikata blushes, and as he agrees to join her, Takagi admits that she is having an eventful summer vacation because she got to spend it with someone, but the clueless donkey has no idea she is talking about him. A couple of weeks later, Takagi is at the mall shopping for a swimsuit when she suddenly bumps into Ikata coming out of a bookstore. Ikata freaks out the moment he sees her, because he's just bought his favorite spicy manga, and Takagi is the last person in the world he wants finding out about it. When Takagi questions what he bought from the bookstore, Ikata immediately turns the question around and asks what she's doing there. Takagi explains that she came to buy a swimsuit, and the mere mention of one sends Ikata's brain into overdrive. As he blushes, Takagi playfully asks what type of swimsuit he likes, and Ikata shyly replies that he likes anyone. Trying to avoid the awkwardness, Ikata tries to leave, but Takagi stops him and asks if she can borrow the spicy manga he just bought, making him realize that she must have seen him buying it from the bookstore. However, he quickly denies it, and when Takagi insists on seeing the book he bought, Ikata lies that he bought a comic called Robot Zombie, which is about Joe Biden as a zombie fighting against Terminator. Still, Takagi can easily tell the doofus is capping, so when she demands to see the book, Ikata quickly thinks of an idea to make a bet with her, hoping that will throw her off. He suggests they place a bet on whether he actually bought a spicy manga or not, with the loser having to do whatever the winner wants. After Takagi agrees, Ikata flips his hair to look more confident, hoping to plant some doubt in her mind, and then asks what she's betting on. However, contrary to his expectation, Takagi says she bets her left kidney that he bought a spicy manga, and that's when bro finally realizes that the girl knows him more than his mama. With no choice, Ikata is forced to show her the spicy manga he bought and decides to take his fat L home, but Takagi stops him right there and asks him to accompany her to pick a bathing suit. Before he can argue, she reminds him that he lost and that, according to the rules, the loser must do whatever the winner wants. Shortly afterward, they arrive at the swimsuit section of the mall, where Takagi asks Ikata for his opinion on which swimsuit to choose. To hide his flustered face, Ikata tells her that anything will be good on her since she has no meaningful plot anyway. Since he is unable to pick one, Takagi says she will try them on. After she puts on the first swimsuit, she asks what he thinks of it, and Ikata tells her that he has no idea, so Takagi goes back in, saying she will try as many as possible until he makes up his mind. While waiting for Takagi, Ikata suddenly sees his eyeless friend and his pipsqueak girlfriend also shopping for swimsuits, and panics. A few minutes later, Takagi comes out in a different swimsuit to ask for Ikata's opinion, but when she sees the weird couple, she quickly hides her stripper uniform. When she looks to the side, she spots Ikata's broke boy slides and suspects he must be hiding in the other dressing room. Nakai's girlfriend also notices Ikata's slides and figures out what's going on, so she tells her boyfriend they should leave. After they're gone, Takagi opens the curtains to the dressing room, where Ikata is hiding and teases him for it. Right after that, Takagi flashes several dumpling holders in front of Ikata's face, asking him to pick his choice, and seeing how embarrassed it makes him, she then suggests that they go on a swimming date sometime. That weekend at the park, Ikata and Takagi finish their usual bike training, and since there's nothing left to do, Takagi suggests they work on their summer homework together. Ikata immediately refuses, saying he already has plans, but when Takagi promises to let him copy her homework, the coconut head accepts right away. When he asks where they should do it, Takagi suggests his place, and Ikata nearly suffers a cardiac arrest at the thought. Shortly afterwards, when they arrive at his house, Takagi is nervous as heck, and once they step inside, he takes her to his goon cave. Takagi notices him vibrating like an old Nokia phone, and when she asks if he is fine, Ikata claims that he is. While checking out his room, Takagi notices his massive collection of spicy mangas and then asks if he likes reading naughty manga like that. Ikata misinterprets the question, thinking she's asking if he likes her, which makes him nervous. However, Takagi clarifies that she was referring to his taste in manga, and then compliments how much she likes that his room smells just as disgusting as him. Ikata quickly changes the subject, and suggests they get down to doing their homework, but since he only has one chair in his room, Takagi proposes that they use his bed instead. Even though this makes Ikata uncomfortable, he agrees and reminds Takagi of her earlier promise to let him copy her answers. Takagi assures him the deal is still on, but when she pulls out a writing drill book, saying that's all she brought, Ikata realizes that he has been fooled for the 100th time in this anime, while Takagi just bursts out laughing at how gullible he is. While doing his homework, Ikata makes a mistake because he keeps thinking about bending Takagi over. As he reaches for the eraser, he and Takagi accidentally hold hands, turning the moment into a scene straight out of a rom-com. However, before Ikata wets himself, he quickly yanks his hand away and bolts to the toilet for some hand relief. Hours later, after they finish their assignments, Takagi leaves, promising to visit again, but Ikata just stands there in disbelief that a girl actually came to his shack for the first time. Over the following weeks, Ikata makes huge progress in learning to ride a bicycle with Takagi. However, some days back, whenever Takagi holds his waist to balance herself, it tickles his millimeter-peter, almost making him fall, so he tells her to stop. To solve this problem, Takagi takes charge of the handlebar and then asks him to hold her just the way he wants to be held. As Ikata sits behind her, He is captivated by her sweet cheeks and gets lost in the sauce, but Takagi tells him to hurry the heck up, so he nervously places his hand on her shoulder. In the present, Ikata has finally mastered how to ride a bike, but he still feels ticklish anytime Takagi touches his waist. Since Ikata is now a pro biker, Takagi tells him there's no need for them to practice at the park anymore, and then reminds him that the summer vacation is almost over. The following week, the entire city is affected by a terrifying typhoon, but that doesn't stop Ikata from going to school. In fact, the lunatic likes it, as standing in the midst of the mighty wind makes him feel invincible. While he dramatically glazes himself as the king of the wind, Takagi suddenly shows up and wonders if she will need to make an urgent call to the asylum. Embarrassed that Takagi caught him goofing around, Ikata quickly lies that he was checking the direction of the wind, but Takagi doesn't give a middle finger what he is doing. However, she still lets him know that she knows he is capping, and after mimicking the king of the wind rubbish she caught him doing, she asks if he notices anything different about her. After staring her down, Ikata mentions that he notices that she isn't riding her bike, and Takagi confirms he is right. She then asks what he thinks is the reason why she isn't riding her bike, and before he gives an answer, she assures him that if he gets it right, she won't tell anyone about the lunatic behavior she caught him displaying earlier. To make things a little complicated, she tells him that he has until the plastic bag on the road gets to where they are to answer her question. Ikata quickly suspects there must be a twist in the question, and the answer can't be that simple if Takagi is so serious about it. After using all his brain cells to think, he finally comes to the conclusion that Takagi didn't ride her bicycle in the wind because she is worried that the wind will blow her skirt up. However, to say such an answer is too naughty for Ikata, so he decides to keep quiet until the wind blows the paper bag past them. Since he didn't get the answer, Takagi tells him that the reason is simply because it's dangerous to ride a bike in a typhoon, and then advises him to stop overthinking things. As they walk to school under the terrible windy conditions, Takagi keeps teasing and mimicking his ridiculous King of the Wind stunt from earlier, frustrating Ikata to the max. Days later, all the students are asked to participate in the school marathon. While Ikata's big-headed friend and his buddy with beaver teeth are completely bummed out by this, Ikata sees it as the perfect challenge to finally beat Takagi and assert his dominance. As the marathon starts, Ikata plans not to waste unnecessary energy, but just take things nice and easy. Since he has been jogging every evening over the last couple of weeks just to nail this marathon, Ikata believes there's no way Takagi can ever best him. Just then, Takagi catches up to him, and after she teases him for running like a baddie, she runs past him, leaving Ikata doubting his strategy to take it nice and easy. As panic sets in, Ikata fears that Takagi might keep her pace and finish the race, so he immediately increases his speed to catch up. Eventually, he catches up with her, but Takagi spices things up by declaring that if he can touch her, then he will become the winner. Right after saying this, she sonics off, and Ikata chases after her to touch her. However, he slows down when he realizes that he can't just grab Takagi in front of everyone, and that's when he finally figures that he has been tricked by Takagi once again. His only option now is to gas her out, so Ikata makes a counter bet that if she can run 50 meters ahead of him, then she wins the race. Takagi agrees to his bet, but after running a few meters, she declares herself the winner, shocking Ikata. As she turns back, Ikata notices the sign stating that girls end their race there while boys continue, and he crashes out, realizing he has been scammed yet again. Much later, as they walk home after school, Ikata is still pissed that Takagi tricked him, so to cheer him up, Takagi tickles his ribs, making him squirm like a brunette. After Ikata complains about how much he hates being tickled, he suddenly gets struck by an idea. He challenges Takagi to a game where they both tickle each other, and the first person to laugh will be the loser. As Takagi agrees, Ikata smiles because he believes he got her this time. After assessing the situation, he notices that she is at a disadvantage because both her hands are holding her bike, which will make it impossible for her to protect her ribs. While he thinks about this, Takagi warns him that her ribs have lost the ability to be tickled and then tickles him, but Ikata holds back his laugh. Thinking she must be bluffing, Ikata tries to tickle her, but freezes when he realizes that doing that might be inappropriate. When Takagi threatens to attack his ticklish waist again, Ikata panics and then steps back to avoid it. At that moment, he finally realizes that it was a brain-dead idea to have challenged Takagi to such a risky game. To ensure the game ends in a draw, Ikata keeps his distance from Takagi, but he suddenly notices Takagi doing some silly stuff with her face, and this makes him laugh hard. Because of this, Ikata loses the game and is forced to do anything Takagi wants him to do. After thinking it over, Takagi stops her bike and says as his punishment, she wants him to poke her ribs. As Ikata tries to poke her ribs, He struggles mentally since this is his first time to touch a girl's curvy waist. But as he summons all his courage and pulls it off, Takagi reminds him that this only proves her ribs aren't ticklish and then teases that her armpits are, making Ikata freak out. That night, Ikata gets his first ever mobile phone and is thrilled about it. So when he gets to school the next day, the first thing he does is add his 2 loser friends on WhatsApp. When Takagi notices his new phone, she asks to take a look, so Ikata gives it to her. However, while she checks out his phone, Ikata starts thinking of how he can successfully prank her using his new phone. So later that day after school, as they walk home as usual, Ikata wonders why Takagi hasn't asked for his WhatsApp contact yet. Since without her WhatsApp contact, he won't be able to prank her, he gets anxious just thinking about asking her for it directly as a real man should. When he tries to ask her, his balls fail him, and he ends up crashing out like the horrendous beta chump that he is. Seeing his face turn redder than a tomato, Takagi suspects he wants to ask her something, but when Ikata denies it, she guesses that what he really wants is her WhatsApp contact. Since she already let the cat out of the bag, Ikata decides to ride the train like the gold digger that he is, and then indirectly asks for her number. However, after teasing him for lacking the courage to ask like a man, Takagi points out that she suspects he wants her contact information to prank her. Seeing that Takagi has figured out his plan, Ikata caves and finally admits that was his intention, and just watching him crash out like a heartbroken girl makes Takagi burst into uncontrollable laughter. She then tells him she always knew that was his plan. Still, she agrees to share her WhatsApp contact with him. Once they done sharing contacts, she tells him that for trying to tease her, he will be punished, and his penalty will be to help her clean up the class the following week when she is on day duty. As they part ways, she says she will chat him up when she gets home, leaving Ikata worried that she plans to tease him even at home. The following week, Ikata meets up with Takagi in class to help with her day duty as she wanted. As they clean the chalkboard together, Takagi notices Ikata's tired face and suspects he must have stayed up all night watching his favorite steamy anime. However, when Ikata denies it, Takagi then guesses he must have stayed up all night chatting with his useless friends. Seeing how curious Takagi is to know about his night, Ikata spots an opening to tease her. Just then, Takagi tells him that when she got her first phone, she was so geeked out that she texted everyone she knew until one day she got into trouble with her parents. Hearing this, Ikata wonders who Takagi must be texting, and when he asks if the person is a girl from their class, Takagi refuses to give a direct answer. This makes Ikata suspect she's trying to play with his head like last time when he later found out the guy she rode a bike with was her dad. However, when he mentions that the guy is her dad, Takagi tells him that only a loser would text their dad all night. She then tells him she'll only reveal the person if he confesses to what he and his friends were chatting about all night long. Seeing the perfect opportunity to prank her, Ikata agrees, then tells her that he and his pals were just sharing scary videos, and then sends her a link to a YouTube video of a goat transforming into a beast. However, Takagi suddenly shows him a picture of an OnlyFans model and then asks if this is what he spends his entire night thinking about. Freaked out by this, Ikata immediately denies sending anything like that, and Takagi admits she was just teasing him. When she finally starts watching the scary video he sent her, Ikata expects her to cower in fear, but his expectation shatters when he sees how chilled Takagi is. When he asks if she isn't scared, Takagi explains that only a worthless coward will get frightened by watching a scary video in the morning. Feeling miserable that his prank flopped, Ikata asks who she talked to on the phone, and Takagi finally admits that the person is her cousin. Realizing he's been fooled yet again annoys Ikata, but Takagi just laughs, thoroughly enjoying his suffering. Later that night, Ikata punishes himself with push-ups for getting teased by Takagi. Once he's done, he decides to scare her by sending a scary video that will give her chills, so she won't be able to sleep. However, just as he is about to send the video, a call from Takagi comes in, and as he nervously picks up, she tells him that she knows he was planning to send her a scary video. Ikata immediately denies it, but Takagi changes the subject and tells him how weird it feels talking to him so late at night for the first time, and then she hangs up. The next day, while walking to school, Ikata spots 2 feisty cats about to throw hands, so instead of stopping them, he decides to be the cameraman. When Takagi asks why he's suddenly so hung up on taking pictures, Ikata explains that he's competing with his buddies to see who is the best cameraman. He shows her the leading picture taken by one of his friends and then asks if he can take a picture of her funny face to take the lead. Takagi agrees, but on the condition that he will do anything she asks him to. On the way, she suddenly stops and puts on a funny face, causing Ikata to burst out laughing like a clown. Once she is done, she walks ahead, saying she gave him a picture-perfect moment and he screwed it up by laughing. Ikata begs her for another opportunity, but Takagi refuses, and after walking quite a distance, she scares him with a toy snake and then takes a funny picture of him. Ikata begs her to delete the picture, but Takagi refuses, insisting that she will only delete it if he agrees to do anything she wants. After she shows him the embarrassing picture she took of him, Takagi laughs, and seeing this as his chance to get back at her, Ikata immediately tries to snap a picture of her, but she quickly turns demure while flashing a peace sign. Ikata then tries to bargain, begging that he will delete her picture if she deletes his, but Takagi refuses and then rides home, leaving Ikata standing there fuming. The following day, as Ikata heads to school, he regrets his miserable life and how Takagi has made it even more horrible by teasing him non-stop every day. While lost in thought, the doofus bumps into a utility pole and hopes no one caught that on camera. Suddenly, Takagi shows up on her bike and asks them to walk to school together, and Ikata nervously agrees. On the way, Ikata is nervous, praying that Takagi didn't see him bump into the pole like a dummy, and when he figures that she didn't see anything, he sighs in relief. Takagi then compliments how spiffy he looks in his winter uniform, and Ikata, feeling himself, thanks her. Takagi also notices how tall the uniform makes him look, and when she points this out, Ikata brags that he is experiencing a growth spurt, unlike her, whose only growth spurt is the mosquito bite on her chest. His roasting strikes Takagi's ego hard, so she calls him a big-headed dwarf and then challenges him to a height contest to see who is taller among them. To confirm this, they make a detour to an abandoned shrine to measure their heights. After they take off their shoes, they stand so close to each other that Ikata can feel the shape of Takagi's buns, and this bricks him up. After Takagi measures their heights with her hand, she concludes that they are both the same height, but Ikata disagrees and accuses her of standing on her tiptoes to cheat. To prove she isn't cheating, Takagi comes face to face, and seeing how close her face is to his makes Ikata blush. After he nervously measures it himself, Ikata discovers that he is an inch taller, and Takagi laughs, admitting that she indeed stood on her tiptoes earlier. She also casually admits Ikata won the height challenge, but Ikata thinks that even though she is trying to be cool about losing, she must definitely be bitter on the inside. Just as she is reading his mind, Takagi tells him that she isn't bitter. Rather, she says she is happy she isn't tall since tall people like him tend to bump into utility poles. Upon hearing this, Ikata freezes, realizing that Takagi actually saw him bump into the utility pole earlier, which makes him panic. Later that day at school, Ikata suddenly feels Takagi's chilled palm on his face, which makes him shiver. As he protests the assault, Takagi raises her hand and asks him to get back at her, but the thought of touching her smooth like butter skin makes Ikata nervous, so he refuses. As Takagi continues to pester him like a girl in need of a major oil change, the three resident school gossips spy on them and suspect they must be smashing since they are always together. So, during lunch break, they meet up with Takagi to ask if she is dating Ikata. Much later in class, Ikata figures out a fail-proof plan to prank Takagi on their way home, and this makes him grin like a vampire. All of a sudden, Takagi asks if he would like to go home with her that day, and Ikata immediately says yes. However, he wonders whether she has figured out his plan to prank her on their way home since she normally doesn't ask such questions. Minutes later, while Ikata heads to the restroom, his two creepy-looking friends invite him to a party where losers gather to measure sizes of their tiny willies. But Ikata declines, and this makes them believe the reason he doesn't have time for them is that he is now dating Takagi. As Ikata denies it, one of Takagi's friends with a stupid eyelash suddenly shows up to confirm that Takagi and Ikata aren't dating since Takagi herself confirmed it when they asked her in the restroom earlier. After school that day, Takagi tells Ikata how her friends asked her in the restroom earlier if they were dating. She adds that because she always teases him, everyone in school now thinks she is the one simping for him. As they head home, they stop at the vending machine for drinks, but Ikata notices his favorite is missing, and the ones left are as bad as garbage juice. He realizes that no matter which one he decides to pick, he will surely regret it, but just then, a brilliant idea for a prank hits his mushy brain. He then buys one of the disgusting drinks he hates to prove a point. After he takes a gulp, he asks Takagi to pick between drinking a very tasty juice that will give her a fever and a horrible drink that tastes like goat urine. While Takagi mulls over the question, Ikata, watching her keenly, believes she will be unable to answer such a difficult question and expects her to crumble. Takagi asks if he will come visit her if she drinks the tasty juice and ends up with a fever, and when Ikata confirms that he will, Takagi tells him she will gladly drink it. Seeing that, contrary to what he had expected, Takagi isn't troubled by his impossible question, Ikata asks another question. This time, He asks if she would rather pick $1 million from Elon Musk or choose a life where she keeps teasing him for eternity. Without breaking a sweat, Takagi says she doesn't need Elon's money because she's been saving the change her parents give her, and she would rather keep teasing him. Realizing Ikata's goal is to give her a hard time, Takagi decides to ask a question of her own. She asks if he would rather have her disappear forever or be teased by her forever. Just thinking about Takagi vanishing forever gives Ikata a midday nightmare, so he shyly says he would rather be teased forever. As Takagi teases him over his choice, Ikata angrily admits that even though he hates it when she teases him, the last thing he wants is for her to be gone forever. Seeing him blush while saying this, Takagi makes fun of him, which frustrates him. Then Takagi comes up with another question and asks if he would rather get 0 in all his tests or French kiss her. Ikata has a nervous breakdown at the question, and as he nervously considers his choices, he realizes that if he keeps getting 0 in all his tests, it will mean he will eventually end up a school dropout. Just imagining being a school dropout haunts him, and kissing Takagi freaks him out, so he silently goes with the kissing option. Pleased to hear this, Takagi gets close like she wants to kiss, and seeing Ikata tweak, she smiles and tells him she just wants to measure their heights. Days later, on his way to school, Ikata tries to pet a cat using the techniques he learned from a cat show on television. But after he follows the exact directions from the show and tries to pet the cat, Takagi suddenly shows up to scare the cat away, leaving him frustrated. Despite being angry that Takagi screwed his chance of petting a cat, Ikata is a bit relieved that she didn't get to see him pet one, believing she will make a mockery of him for being a girly boy who likes cute things. However, Takagi already suspects that the dude likes cats, so she stops by the side of the road and starts gesturing for a nearby stray to come over. While watching her call the cat over, Ikata finds it silly as he believes the cat wouldn't fall for that, but he is speechless when he sees the cat cuddle up to Takagi as if she were its owner. As Ikata watches Takagi stroke the cat, he wishes he were the one stroking it instead. When Takagi asks if he likes cats, Ikata immediately denies it so as not to look like some sissy. However, Takagi knows the cat-obsessed freak is lying through his teeth, so she tempts him by stroking the cat even more, and Ikata nearly dies of jealousy. Ikata then tries to pull a fast one on Takagi by calling people who keep cats as pets silly. Takagi accuses him of saying that only because he's scared of getting scratched, so Ikata excitedly insists on petting the cat to prove he isn't afraid. However, Takagi crushes his hope of petting the cat to dust by assuring him that she does not doubt him, and she actually believes him. Seeing the shock on his face makes Takagi laugh, and she tells him that she already knows how badly he wants to pet the cat. Later that day during fine art class, the students are asked to draw a portrait of each other, so Takagi and Ikata are paired as drawing mates. However, Ikata is having a hard time just staring at Takagi, so he decides to look elsewhere. When Takagi asks if he is actually looking at her while drawing, Ikata claims that he is, but he freaks out whenever Takagi looks straight into his eyes. Feeling insecure, Ikata wonders if Takagi is disgusted just staring at how enormous his head looks, so he decides to look straight into Takagi's eyes, hoping to make her feel insecure too. But Takagi remains as chilled as ever and just continues to sketch. Just then, Ikata overhears one of Takagi's friends angrily complaining that her partner drew her to look like a duck, and this sparks an idea in Ikata to use it as an inspiration for a prank on Takagi. A few minutes later, Takagi asks to take a look at Ikata's drawing, and as Ikata hands over his portrait, Takagi sees an ugly picture of your mom. Ikata explains that he drew it based on how he envisioned her, but Takagi tells him that if he wants to draw her looking like Pennywise, it's best he goes all out. After she returns his portrait, Takagi makes finishing touches on hers and then shows him the Michelangelo-type portrait she drew of him. Ikata is stunned that she is so good at drawing, but after Takagi makes a few corrections, she shows him the portrait again, and this time with blush on his cheeks. Seeing his blushing face makes Ikata furious, but Takagi calmly explains that he's been blushing like a girl in love the entire time she's been sketching him. Later that day in class, Takagi engages in card reading with her friends, and after she is done, she meets up with Ikata and insists they play a game of rock, paper, scissors. She says the loser will get to buy juice for the winner, but Ikata declines, saying he is on duty to clean up the class after school. Still, Takagi insists they play the game, and this time she changes the rule that if Ikata wins, she will help him clean up the class. When Ikata demands to know why she wants to play rock, paper, scissors so badly, Takagi tells him not to worry about it, so he agrees to play with her. As they throw hands, Ikata wins the game and is shocked to earn his first victory over her. After school, as they clean up the class together, Ikata is worried to see that Takagi doesn't seem to mind that she lost the game. Suddenly, Takagi stops and asks if he believes in card reading, and when Ikata asks why she wants to know, Takagi tells him that she and her friends did a little card reading that day. She reveals that after her card was read, she was told she would eventually do well with her current crush. She then asks Ikata if he has someone he is crushing on, and Ikata immediately starts to panic. Takagi then explains that she asked because she had his card reading done, and it turns out he will eventually bag his crush. Ikata nearly jumps out of his skin when he hears this, but Takagi also reveals that she did a card reading about the rock-paper-scissors game they played, and the result said he was going to win. Upon hearing this, Ikata feels disappointed in himself, realizing he didn't actually win the game like he wanted to. Before long, a letter craze starts in school, where girls send letters to each other instead of talking directly. Ikata and his freak friends, however, don't feel the hype about the letter craze and think it's just a waste of time. Hours later in class, Ikata notices Takagi reading a letter she received from someone, and he is shocked that someone as intelligent as her can be involved in something so silly. As Ikata opens his textbook, he is stunned to find a letter inside and immediately assumes it is a love letter. He wonders if the letter was sent by Takagi, but as he tries to ask her, he freezes, realizing it might be from some random chick he doesn't know. When Takagi asks what the problem is, he quickly claims it's nothing and starts talking about how lovely the weather is. However, Takagi suspects he is hiding something, so she tells him that she is responsible for writing the letter inside his textbook. Shocking Ikata, she then tells him to read the letter, but Ikata shyly says he will read it at home. Takagi insists he reads it now, and when Ikata asks why, she says it's because she wants an answer to the letter after school closes. Totally convinced it must be a love letter, Ikata nervously shakes and almost loses his composure. However, when he opens the letter, he is shocked to see that it's a request from Takagi asking him to walk home with her after school. Feeling glum, Ikata asks why she didn't just ask him directly, and Takagi explains that she wanted to see his priceless reaction. As Ikata yells at her for teasing him once again, a piece of chalk from the teacher smacks his head as usual, making Takagi laugh. Several years back, when Ikata first joined the school, he arrived late to class and was asked to sit at the front, which made him tense. Fortunately, the teacher suggested they rearrange the seating, and Ikata was sent to the far back corner to sit. That's when he met Takagi, who sat close to him and was nice to him. The next day, Takagi arrived late to class, and the instant she took her seat, she told Ikata that she could guess why he had also arrived late. She revealed that the reason was because he was delivering a lost item, shocking Ikata, who wondered if she was a seer. When he asked how she knew, Takagi showed him her handkerchief with her name on it that she forgot in school the day before, and he returned. Back in the present, Takagi informs Ikata of a seating arrangement change that is scheduled for that day. Ikata claims to be thrilled about it since they haven't had a seating arrangement exercise for a while, but Takagi sadly says that she wanted to be next to him a while longer. A few minutes later, after the seating arrangement is concluded, Takagi is sent to sit at the front of the class, while Ikata moves to the side to become seat partners with Nakai's emo-looking babe. Just then, a fat chungus starts screaming that he would like to sit at the back so he can stuff himself with food without any interruption, and then asks for a seat swap. As Ikata remembers Takagi's words about wanting to spend more time with him, he claims to have bad eyesight and asks for him and the fat guy to switch seats. But the fatty tells him he already exchanged with someone else, frustrating Ikata. A few moments later, Ikata suddenly sees Takagi sitting beside him, and when he asks how, she explains that she exchanged seats with Nakai's girlfriend, who desperately misses her boyfriend and wants to be with him. She then teases Ikata for trying to exchange seats just so he can sit with her, and Ikata blushes hard, trying to deny it. Comment Tease Master if you watch this recap to the end, and if you enjoy anime recaps like this, subscribe to the channel and watch this next video.